On today's episode of Phinsde The NFL, are the Miami Dolphins quietly planning to start Tyler Huntley in Week 4 against the Tennessee Titans? Well, one report may lead you to believe that. Also, are the Miami Dolphins totally out on trading for a big upgrade at quarterback this season because they expect Tagovailoa back sooner than later? We'll discuss that. Plus, we'll look at the history of the quarterback carousel over the last decade in Miami. Plus, much more, including an update on the situation and what happened with Tyreek Hill and those police officers regarding Calais Campbell and Jonnu Smith. So do me the favor, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and as always, let's get into this one.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field on the near side, man open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's going over the touchdown again. Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one. I hope all of you are having a fantastic week, as it's hump day, and we are here to discuss some Miami Dolphins football as we get ready for Week 4, and we turn the page from that ugly Week 3 and even Week 2, and hopefully we can right the ship against Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans on Monday night. So thank y'all for coming through. Shout out to everyone already showing up in the chat. We got Russell in the chat, Scotty Joe 22, Dolphin Dawn, South Florida Dawn, BX, James Steele, Chef Jew, Josh Hart, Richard Blackstone, Brad Martin, Steve V. Who else we got here? Jason Keck, Pro Special, Austin Caddy, Nick Queck, Chris G, Mark Brown, Dana Boyce. I forgot. I know we went over that pronunciation. Jeff Stoudemire, Jan Fins fan, John Featherland. Who else we got here? Michael Noble. Matt Farms is in the chat. Daniel Barry, Sports Highlights, Robert Alvarez, Joey LaSalle, Jeffrey Ward, Philip LeDuc, Robert Carrillo, Michael Noble, Bones, X Factor, M-Cord. What's going on, Brittany? Shout out to you, Brad. No, you the man, brother. You the man. You know, every time someone says that, all I think is Psycho Sid. Who's the man? Who's the man? You know, if I could fist pump you, I would. Sean Tunsil, what's going on? The cousin of Laramie Tunsil is in the chat. John Corley, Joint to Joint, Tori Dixon, Jorge. What's going on? Jason Stamps, Daniel Meehan, Brian Fawcett, Tom Santinello. Shout out to you, Dan. I know you the man. Josh 45. What's going on, everyone? Ernesto. Shout out to everyone in the chat. over 200 of you really already in the chat. You're piling in. So smash that like button as you come through. Let me crawdad. If you haven't had a chance, go check out yesterday's episode. I thought it was like, over 450 of you showed up for that live chat, and I thought it ended up being actually a pretty good episode. So shout out to DT, Mudbone, Pendas, all of you in the chat. It ended up being a pretty good episode. We covered a lot of things. So, and kind of this is a continuation of that episode in a sense, because we played the clips of Mike McDaniel discussing Skylar Thompson potentially starting, being very vague, but still leaving the window open, the door open for a potential start if he's healthy. Well, we're going to talk about that and a little bit of the trickle effect from that. What's going on, Scott? How are you doing? Did I ever see Patrick Pauls? That's the rep I forgot to put in, actually. That's the one rep I forgot to put into the All-22 yesterday when we did the breakdown. That's the rep I forgot to put in, was Patrick Pauls' one rep where he tossed that linebacker. So, that was my bad. I did 19 plays. I should have just rounded up to 20. I meant to. I just forgot to put that play in there. Brittany, did I see your text? Yeah, I did. Oh, I saw your multiple texts. I saw, but your boy was having a siesta, and then I arose from my siesta to my kids getting home from school and had to have dinner and start to show up. So I'll hit you up after. All right. I want to talk about something because, reading comprehension is a hard thing for everyone. Reading comprehension is a hard thing on the internet. So I tweeted out today, and I stand by this tweet wholeheartedly. Like, there's just zero chance that I don't. Anyways, I tweeted out today that, and it's because it's true on the timeline. I've kept seeing people say Miami let AVG walk and Chop was his replacement. And I said, no, Shaq Barrett was AVG's cheaper replacement. AVG walked in March. Chop wasn't drafted until April. And I basically said, stop hating on a young, talented kid who has no impact in AVG walking. By the way, Chop has the 5th highest pass rush win rate in the whole NFL at 24%. And he's not even a polished product yet. He's going to be a stud, is what I said. So people took issue with a few things from this, Number one, I got people in my comments saying that I said AVG walked. No, I did not. AVG never walked. Gink was never offered a contract by Miami. What's the opening statement? What's the opening line of that tweet today? I keep seeing people say Miami let AVG walk and Chop was his replacement. Miami let AVG walk. I say that in the first opening sentence. Miami let AVG walk. They wanted Shaq Barrett as a cheaper replacement. Then I had people saying, well, he's not cheaper. Yes, he is. Did it work? No. 110% it did not work. But that was their idea. AVG got a 2-year, $20 million deal. That's a 10-year. That's a $10 million a year annual average. Shaq got $7 million a year in terms of annual average. AVG also got a longer term, 2 years, and he got more guaranteed money too. Now, was letting AVG walk the right move over Shaq Barrett? Obviously, no. The guy retired. And AVG's good, but again, context is needed in the situation. AVG's back into the defense he was drafted in under Brian Flores. I mean, there's no bigger AVG fan in this community than Mr. Ballgame. Mr. Ballgame was telling everyone how special AVG was going to be back in like 2019. So what are we having? What are we having this discussion? And he'll be the first one to tell you he's thriving in a situation built for him. But I digress. I see the hate on, I see the hate Shaq Barrett's getting and the blame he's getting. And then there's even people that are like, well, they wouldn't have drafted Chop if they kept AVG. Says who? I keep telling all you people that are still hung up on them not drafting Graham Barton or Jackson Powers Jr. I mean, I wanted Zach Frazier more than anybody. Everyone was talking about, Graham Barton as an interior option at guard, or, they all wanted Jackson Powers Johnson. I was the one saying, Zach Frazier's that dude. So let's get that correct first, number one. Number two, I kept telling people, they're not going to draft interior offensive line in the 20s. They do not value that. It is not a premium position to Chris Grier. And now as you sit back and look at the makeup of this team, was I wrong? They thought Liam Eichenberg could be a suitable replacement for Robert Hunt because he's cheap and because of what they invested in him. Like I had someone today, and we'll get into the Tyler Huntley stuff later, but there's sweat equity into Skylar Thompson. You got to keep giving him a chance. The guy's been here for 3 years. Tim Boyle been over here for a little over 3 weeks and operated that offense better, looked more decisive, was anticipating windows, was processing the field and the defense much quicker, much better. What are we discussing here? You got sweat equity. This is the problem with the Miami Dolphins. They got sweat equity and draft equity in certain guys, and they don't know when the hell to move off of them, i.e. Liam Eichenberg. You got sweat equity into Robert Jones. Is that why you keep making this investment and trying to make a round peg fit into a square hole? Is that why you keep trying to do this? So this whole sweat equity thing, that's a loser mentality. You got to know what are the great... It doesn't even matter the sport. It could be hockey, it could be football, it could be baseball, it could be basketball. One of the great, and I've talked about this over the years, one of the great traits a GM can owe, and even ownership and management with GMs too, in the sense of knowing when to cut bait. A good GM knows when to cut bait with players. A good owner or management team knows when to cut bait with a GM. That's how it works in every sport. And I can use hockey as a perfect example. I always go back to hockey because it's my second favorite sport. With football, well, they're tied. But I go back to the Pittsburgh Penguins all the time. When we won a Stanley Cup in 2009 with Dan Bylsma, they refused to cut bait with the coach because he had won a Stanley Cup and he had been to back-to-back cups. He won a Stanley Cup after they had been to back-to-back cups because Michel Therrien took them the year before. So, that's my whole issue here. We did this. The Penguins did the same thing with Mike Sullivan. He's still around. He probably should have been fired a year or two after we went back to back in 2016 and 2017. He should have been canned. But because he's won cups, he earns this grace. And we got this country club mentality, and we've missed playoffs now. The Pittsburgh Penguins have the longest professional sports playoff streak. And it got broken because they wouldn't move off of a coach. So when I'm sitting here, I'm using that to say this. You got to know when to cut bait with players. You got to know when to cut bait with coaches. And that works for every sport. But anyways, I digress. Going back to the Chop thing here. And then people come, where you get this pass rush win rate? What are you talking about? Chop, you go to ESPN. I'm not using ESPN, people. This is PFF. And I got people arguing me the semantics of this. Look at this. Win percentage, okay? Aiden Hutchinson's number 1. Chop's number 5 at 20. What does this mean? This means how many snaps you are winning. The percentage of snaps on your pass rush you are winning. This is pass rush win percentage. People are arguing me, well, that's not the same as pass rush win rate. Brother, a percentage is a rate. A rate and a percentage are metrics. And there's a reason why pass rush win rate and pass rush win percentage are both represented by percentages. Because it's a percentage, both are a percentage of the pass rushes you are winning. And I got people arguing me this kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. It's the same exact thing. It's just two different companies with the same metric that are titled differently. That's exactly what it is. And I got people arguing with me. Well, listen, y'all want to use PFF grades when it suits your narrative and it conveniently fits your narrative. But God forbid Reason comes out here and uses, and what do I always say about, if you've listened to me for 5 years, what do I always say about PFF? Don't trust the grades, trust your eyes. And then I always follow that up with saying, I like PFF for their analytics more than their grades. I always say that. So, Chop Robinson, by PFF's metrics, is winning on 24% of his pass rushes. That is the same as a pass rush win rate. That is a pass rush win percentage. And people are literally arguing me with this. All because they get in their feelings about Andrew Van Ginkel. Man, I said it before years ago when they tried to crucify me on X over me not liking Jerome Baker's contract. And I'll say it again. People need to start separating their love for the player and their objectivity. I mean, I get labeled a Tua stan, but objectively, I never called him a franchise quarterback till 2022, until after the Ravens come back. What would I say? He looks like, if you watch the film, he looks like he can be a franchise quarterback if you upgrade the coaching and personnel around him. Was I not right? The man just led the league in passing last year and in passer rating the year before that, before he got hurt. So I was right. So even with Tua, who I'm self-admittedly a fan of, I've still kept it objective. If I wasn't, I would have been telling all y'all in 2020 and 2021, before Big Daniel got here, I would have told all y'all he was a franchise quarterback if I wasn't keeping it objective. And I was just pushing a narrative. And now I've kept it objective the last 2 years, but no one wants to talk about it. After Tua's concussions in 2022, that offseason, what did I say? I want Baker Mayfield. I want a legitimate contingency plan. Now what have I been saying? I like Jackson Dart and I like Aaron Nussmeier. I'm willing to use a draft pick because I want a legitimate contingency plan in place. See, people confuse me, There's people in this thing that, Penix this, Penix that, when I was the first one out ahead on Penix, loving him. But the reason why I was saying it doesn't make sense in the draft was because I'm telling you they're not going to draft him. It's not about what I want, what you want, what he wants, what she wants, what they want. It's about what the Miami Dolphins want. And when you objectively step back and look at the situation, you got to tell people that listen to you or people that watch you what you think the team is going to do. Not what, you can say what you think they should do, but at the end of the day, what you think they should do compared to what logic tells you they will do, you got to go with what logic tells you they will do. This is why, this is why I never got overinvested in taking an interior offensive lineman in the first round, because I kept telling all of you, they value premium positions, tackles, edges, corners, wide receivers, quarterbacks. They value premium positions in the first round. But people, and that was a perfect example of me telling people this is what they're going to do. This is their philosophy. Put aside your desire for an interior offensive lineman and start going off of their philosophy. Why do you think I was hyping up Chop the way I was? I saw what went down. What went down with Bradley Chubb. Now, I was hyping up Chop since November, and Chubb went down in December, right? So, but I also knew there were outs coming up. There was money coming up. There were guys who are going to be free agents like AVG, et cetera, et cetera. And edge is a premium position. And what has Mike McDaniel told us? Literally, you got to sift through the truths and the coach speak. And one of the truths Mike McDaniel has told us since he got here is that, hey, if I could draft an edge rusher every year, I would. And how Chris Greer operates. He values the premium positions. And these are premium positions viewed across the whole league. Like, the whole league values tackles as premium position. The whole league views edges as premium positions. Why do you think the Raiders gambled so hard on Sealand Farrell, right? Edges and these premium positions, you will have guys reach on athleticism and unpolished guys. We've seen the history of guys reaching in the top 10 because of guys' freakish athletic ability at certain premium positions. Again, I go back to Sealand Farrell. That's just how it works. And listen, I wanted an interior offensive lineman. I wanted Zach Frazier in the second round. I wanted Christian Haynes. I wanted Christian McCormick. There were guards I legitimately liked in the mid rounds, and I wanted them to take. So, yeah, I was all down for them upgrading interior offensive linemen, and there were guys I liked. And it was on record as saying, that I loved. Christian Haynes was one of them. Zach Frazier was one of them. Why did I love Zach Frazier? You got to understand everyone's scouting tendencies, too. If you've been watching me for 5 years, what do I always... Exactly, Deion Jordan. They reached because of the freakish athletic ability, right? That's a perfect example. Didn't work out, but that's what happened. But anyways, if you've noticed one tendency, I'll give the chat 2 minutes. Who's been paying attention? Because I know I'm one of the highest viewed Dolphins channels when it comes to the draft. What's one big trait that I am a sucker for interior offensive linemen, specifically centers, when heading into the draft? If you know in the chat, you're going to get around. If anyone can nail this, and you had to have been listening to me closely for 5 years. No, it's not Anchor. No, it's not Anchor. Close, but it's not. There you go. Scotty nailed it, but he nailed it without Scotty nailed it, but he nailed it without saying. But, I mean, exactly. Frazier was a wrestler. Wrestling background, wrestlers. I'm telling you, specifically centers, interior offensive linemen, when you start dealing with wrestlers, that is what I fall in love with. And a lot of the top center prospects who have come out over the last couple of years have been what? Former wrestling backgrounds. Right? Like, that's how it works. That's something that I fall in love with, right? Creed Humphrey was a wrestler. Zach Frazier was a wrestler, and look at how he's playing right now. I'm telling you, I'm giving you a scouting secret here. That is a trait that should, we talk about red flags. That should be a big green flag for you when you're dealing with interior guys, especially centers. That means they're strong. That means they've got a high level of athleticism. They can move in space more than likely, really well. I'm telling you, they understand leverage, and they're great with leverage and the footwork, right? Because of wrestling. Yeah, I see Self-Lord it on says footwork and leverage. Exactly. That's why, as the draft process went on last year, I was falling more and more in love with Zach Frazier. The tape, the wrestling background, it wasn't a hard eval. And now he's balling. So, there you go, little scouting. One of Reason's little scouting tips for all of you guys. All right? Ike wrestles with oh my God, you killed me, bro. Damn Steelers. Yeah, man. Steelers had a good draft, albeit Troy Fautanu was hurt. And remember, we all love Troy Fautanu. If he was on the board, I'd said run. So, anyways, it is what it is. We got a lot to go over, so let's get into it. Let's start off with some Tua Tagovailoa talk, and then let's get into Tyler Huntley. All right. So here is from one ESPN Inside article. I love Canada because we get it for free. It's not behind a paywall for us. You know what I mean? Oh man, why you gotta do them like that? Now you're gonna have Nancy Pelosi Twitter account coming for you. Eichenberg couldn't win a thumb wrestling match. Oh my God, what's going on, Sean? How are you? All right, let's get into this. All right, so let's start off with Tyler Huntley, actually. We'll start off with Tyler Huntley. So here's the deal with Tyler Huntley. Graziano from ESPN, remember Jeremy Fowler and Graziano, they do these articles together, right? Anyways, this is about Huntley, and this is Dan Graziano. All right. So my sense of the Miami Dolphins quarterback situation while Tua Tagovailoa remains out indefinitely is that yes, it's possible they start Tyler Huntley on Monday night, but that likely depends on Skylar Thompson's health. Thompson started in week 3, but suffered a chest injury, and at this point in the week, the Miami Dolphins aren't sure how much he's going to be able to do in practice and whether he'll be even healthy enough to play in week 4. Huntley got there just last week, and while they like him and he has a shot to start at some point, particularly if Thompson doesn't show more than he did Sunday before his injury, the Dolphins would like to get Huntley some more practice reps in their offense before throwing him out there on the field. If Thompson can't go, then I think the coaches spend the week building some sort of scaled down game plan based around what Huntley can do and start him over Tim Boyle. Regardless, this is a very difficult situation, and there's obviously no timetable for Tagovailoa's return as he consults with more neurologists and works his way through the short and long-term implications of his third diagnosed concussion of the past 3 seasons. Guys, I don't see how Skylar Thompson's starting this week. He was poor. His play was poor. And on top of that, he could potentially be injured. So how are you going to trot out a guy who wasn't good and now he's injured? I just don't. And then you basically, Graziano is basically, he's pretty sure that if Skylar ain't going, it's the Huntley show. Skynet has been terminated. And this feels like we're getting some coach speak this week. Man, listen, you say what you want about Mike McDaniel, but the man's not blind. He saw what we all saw from Skylar Sunday. He was just giving us coach speak about, did Skylar Thompson believe Mike McDaniel in his post-game conference when he said he thought Skylar operated well? He's just not trying to kill the kid's confidence. Now, had it been Brian Flores, or if Mike McDaniel had thought like Brian Flores, he probably would have buried the kid up there. But Mike McDaniel, and come on, we all saw it. We saw Tim Boyle operate the offense more efficiently, more decisively. You don't think they did? And that was probably a rude awakening for them. So this is where I sit. I think right now, the reason why Mike McDaniel was giving us coach speak and was kind of non-committal yesterday, I don't think they're trying to give any, because they're in a position where they can't. I don't think they were trying to give any type of advantage to the Tennessee Titans. I really think that's what the thought process was. Don't let them know. There's no reason to. You don't have to. So are the Miami Dolphins quietly planning to start Tyler Huntley on Monday? I would assume so. Because I just don't see how you trot out Skylar Thompson after the performance compounded by the injury last week. I just don't. Let's put it this way. If you remember how I said Mike McDaniel, he keeps this up, he's going to coach his way out of a job when I think he's probably safe right now and Greer's the one that falls on the sword. This is going to continue to add to the narrative that, Mike, what are you doing? You're either tanking or coaching yourself out of a job. And I don't think you can tank because there's too many guys in that locker room you can't sell that narrative to. You can have a mutiny on your hand and you can lose the locker room if you do that. So I don't think that's the plan. So I'm going to tell you this right now. If they trot Skyler out there with a rib injury after what we saw when he was fully healthy, might I add you, that is going to be malpractice. And that is going to continue the narrative that I'm saying that Mike McDaniel better fix this, because you can't afford to lose the way you lost the last 2 weeks. Because if you add another 8 or 10 of those onto this season, you might coach your way out of a job. Well, starting Skyler adds to that you're coaching your way out of a job when you really would probably be safe when Greer's going to be the one that most likely falls on the sword. So, that's just where I'm at with that. And I do think, I think Aaron Brewer's been really good this year. I don't think there's been much of a drop-off from Connor Williams to Aaron Brewer. I think Brewer's been good. Jackson's had struggles. Has he been crap? No, but he's had struggles. And it's because now he doesn't have Robert Hunt shading to his side and helping him out, and he's got to basically make up for Eichenberg. Eichenberg's been pretty hit or miss. He's had some bad reps, but he's had some good reps. Robert Jones has been an unmitigated disaster. I don't care what anyone tries to tell me about Rob Jones. Rob Jones, since the preseason, you could see it. This is not the guy. And like I've always said, I think if you fix at least just one of those, you're in a much better position than you are right now. Because, Richmond Webb will come up here right now and tell you one leak on the offensive line, guys can deal with and you can work with. 2 leaks on the offensive line, because if you had a legitimate left guard, you could kind of shade Aaron Brewer to Eichenberg and try and help him a little bit, which would make Austin Jackson's life a little bit easier too. So, anyways. Now, the Miami Dolphins, and this is very interesting, they're not going to do that, brother. I think right now, I just start Patrick Paul. I'd start giving him the reps now. I'm not even lying. I'm not even saying that for the sake of saying it. Armstead's wearing a shoulder harness in the first week of football, yet he's telling us all offseason after not participating in a good goddamn thing. Now he's, this is the healthiest I've been in years. Then why are you in a shoulder harness in week 1? And now you have a shoulder issue, a lower body issue, and now you have like an eye/concussion issue. Armstead's not going to move the left guard. That's the problem. And the other problem is too, right? In this offense, you're asking guys like Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg to do stuff they're not best suited for, i.e. pulling, working in space, right? These aren't good athletes with solid footwork and quick feet, right? Let alone Eichenberg's anchor is trash. Robert Jones got the anchor, but he doesn't have the technique, i.e. hand placement, etc., etc. You know what I mean? So you're asking guys who work better in a phone booth. That's why we're having so much success running up the gaps. Because on the interior next to Aaron Brewer, we got 2 guys that are better working in a phone booth as opposed to in open space and a zone concept. That's why we're better right now. Robert Jones could move in space, right? Wynn can move in space, right? They can hit their landmarks. That's why we were so effective with the outside zone stuff last year. Now you got guys who work best in a phone booth, and you're asking them to do stuff outside of their capabilities, and that's why you're seeing us. We're better running in the gap through the gaps right now than we are off the left or right edge. That's literally what you're seeing. That's it. That's when you put things into perspective. Is right there what I just said of what's fundamentally wrong with this interior. Never mind the talent. Their skill set isn't built to what you need. Liam Eichenberg and Jones are better suited for gap concepts than they are zone concepts. That's just a fact. That's why you're seeing us being better running through the gaps with even Achane than we are getting off the edges. Because, I mean, I've showed since preseason how useless is Robert Jones pulling her in space. Eichenberg's not good in space. They're low effort guys, too, when they even get there. Now, are the Miami Dolphins not looking at a serious upgrade at quarterback because they expect Tua back sooner rather than later? This is what Jeremy Fowler said in that very same article right here. While Dolphins make plans at quarterback for at least the next 3 weeks without Tua Tagovailoa, a trade for a passer doesn't seem likely at this point. A source said Miami is, quote, not much into it at this time. Keep in mind, all signs are pointing that Tua Tagovailoa wants to play this again this season, and he's eligible to return in week 7, which he's wrong. It's week 8 because there's a bye week in there, right? So it's week 8. That's just an error. He didn't realize we had a bye week. Making a flashy move for a quarterback, potentially disrupting the loose timeline and plans of Tagovailoa and the team comes with risk. Now the Dolphins might have to do something. So all of this is a bit of a moving target. In the short term, Miami must decide when Skylar Thompson will be available and make plans around that with backups Tyler Huntley and Tim Boyle in mind. So the Miami Dolphins, I mean, you read that and what Fowler's hearing, if they were planning to shut Tua down, if they themselves were planning to shut him down and move off of him or whatever the case may be is, you would think due to the expectations and how this roster is built, they would be out there looking at guys like Davis Mills, Sam Howell, reuniting Russell Wilson with Darrell Bevell, etc. You would think. But what does that tell you right there? That they're expecting Tua to be back sooner than later. And I said this, even if this team is 1-5, would you put it past Greer trotting out Tua Tagovailoa to try and save his job because he gives this offense the best chance to win right now? I know I wouldn't. Chris Greer barely escaped the Flores firing. How do you think he's going to escape this year if it all implodes? Mike McDaniel is going to be the one that's given the chance because they love him in the building. They just paid him. It's the same thing as when Mike McDaniel got here and they forced Danny Crossman and Josh Boyer on him. They will bring in a new GM and they'll do the same thing they did with Mike McDaniel, but just to the GM. Yeah, we'll bring you in and we want you. But you got to give McDaniel a year. If he doesn't make the concessions you want him to make as a head coach, and he doesn't live up to your expectations as a head coach after a year, then you have our blessing to move off of him. That's even what they did. That's specifically what they did with Mike McDaniel when he wanted to replace Boyer with Fangio a year earlier than when we landed him. So I agree with you, Hooked Up Joe. Hooked Up says they're putting Tua in the concussion protocol, even if he just got whiplash. I agree with you. I think he wasn't really hurt that bad. I agree with you. I've heard privately it was nowhere near as bad as Cincinnati. This is why I've been pretty adamant that I think he's back, right? And I've talked about, from day one, I've talked about the Arizona game. And there, even for the people that haven't heard things privately, there were signs publicly, he's not sitting in a dark room after the game. He's up in the bright lights of a locker room asking everyone how they're doing after the game. He's getting cleared before the next game, which was Seattle, to resume football activities as long as he feels fine and he's cleared to travel. I mean, that tells you basically everything you need to know. So, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. Don't ever let it be what it ain't. Now, Albert Breer said this yesterday regarding Tua Tagovailoa. Miami's plan throughout the season has been to prioritize Tua Tagovailoa's health and putting him on injured reserve, sidelining him until at least week 8 was the right thing to take the pressure off everyone in the short term. With that established, what he gets back from outside neurologists this week will likely be pretty important in determining if, how, and when he'll return to football. The plan hasn't changed, Coach McDaniel said Tuesday. It's been executed. I don't report who sources are, but people should talk to me. I've got the real information. But I think even he would concede he still needs more. So really nothing new there from Albert Breer. I don't think it's, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he's back. That's basically where we're at right now. All right. Now, great article here from Barry Jackson. Great article. I got to give him his prop. So, great article from Barry Jackson here. It says 6 years of bad decisions and bad luck of quarterback, how Dolphins' mess was avoidable. It's difficult enough to win in the NFL if you make bad personnel decisions but still get lucky. It's even more difficult to win when you make good decisions but are unlucky. But when you make bad decisions and you're unlucky at the game's most important position, you're ostensibly doomed. It has consistently been one or the other for 6 consecutive years for the Dolphins at quarterback, where one bad choice after another has left the franchise compromised, and even a decision that wasn't an egregiously poor one, drafting Tua, has been foiled yet again by his latest concussion. It did need to be like this, of course. 30 years ago, then Colts executive Bill Tobin famously said, ESPN draft analyst Mel Kiper Jr. has no more credentials to do what he's doing than my neighbor and my neighbor's postman. But a few of the Dolphins' missteps at quarterback have been so clearly avoidable that your neighbor's postman might have gotten them right. And we're not even including the Dolphins' 2006 doctor-recommended decision to trade for Dante Culpepper instead of signing Drew Brees, who's now a Hall of Famer, the team's biggest mistake this century. To recap the last 6 years of quarterback miscalculations, after the 2018 season, Stephen Ross dismissed Coach Adam Gase, explaining that Gase wants to win. It couldn't have been any clearer that Ross wanted to tank the season and position the franchise to select the best quarterback in the draft, later identified by the Dolphins as Joe Burrow. But instead of signing a quarterback bad enough to engineer a 2-win season, they opted for a good enough one to prevent the Dolphins from accomplishing the paramount goal of a tank season and snagging the golden arm QB of their choice. Predictably, Ryan Fitzpatrick was good enough to lead Miami to 5 wins. Josh Johnson, AJ McCarron, and Blaine Gabbert were all free agents that year. None might have torpedoed the Dolphins getting Burrow. All would have been cheaper than Fitzpatrick. But the Dolphins picked the one journeyman who would screw up the tank, and yet they still had another chance to get the tank on track after they inexplicably traded a 2nd rounder and 5th rounder for Josh Rosen, who some of y'all, the same people who say Skylar Thompson was QB1 are the one telling you Josh Rosen was a franchise quarterback. Tells you all you need to know about those people's quarterback opinions. In April 2019, only to find out he couldn't play a lick. If general manager Chris Greer or Ross had simply ordered then coach Brian Flores to continue playing Rosen after he struggled battling 3 starts, Fitzpatrick wouldn't have had the chance to win games against the Jets, the Colts, the Eagles, the Bengals, and New England. Wins that eliminated the Dolphins' dreams on Burrow. And Burrow, again, has been injury prone, and I could imagine where fans would be right now if we had a quarterback who's just as injury prone as Tua at this stage, but he's starting 0-3 right now, and he didn't finish off the Super Bowl. Y'all would be calling for him to be gone, even though he would have taken us to a Super Bowl a few years prior. Nobody could have, the Dolphins cannot be castigated for the pick of Tagovailoa just ahead of Justin Herbert as at number 5 in the 2020 draft because of Tagovailoa's sterling play for much of 2022 and 2023. Nobody could have anticipated the string of concussions, even though he had one at Alabama. But the Dolphins, as often been the case with his regime, brushed aside Tagovailoa's durability issues in college, including 2 high ankle sprains, a posterior wall fracture, and a hip dislocation. Well, in fairness, the posterior wall fracture and hip dislocation was the big one because that was like the car accident level injury that everyone is afraid of, and that's been proven to not have been the issue. The issue from that hip injury has been the concussion he sustained in that hip injury because he's had 3 more documented ones since, and people will say he's had 4 because of what the Bills one isn't technically documented. Even if Tagovailoa was never concussed, how many general managers last April still would pick Tagovailoa ahead of the next 2 quarterbacks drafted in 2020, the more physically gifted Herbert, who went 6th, and Jordan Love? 26. It likely wouldn't have been a long list. Love, after all, received slightly more money than Tagovailoa in his current extension. And with Tagovailoa's outlooks precarious after his 5th concussion, is there a single GM who would select Tagovailoa now ahead of Herbert, Love, or Jalen Hurts? That's unfathomable. So the Dolphins finding themselves in this predicament with Tagovailoa is more bad luck than bad scouting, and I would agree with that. But it could have been avoided with a more competent handling of the tank. Deciding to give Arizona a 2nd-round pick for Rosen, who had 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions, and a dismal 52 passer rating in 6 games as a Dolphin, prevented Miami from drafting Pro Bowl receiver DK Metcalf, who went 2 spots after that 2nd-round pick that Arizona foolishly used on Andy Isabella. In a world in which the Dolphins had signed a more tank-worthy quarterback and hadn't traded a 2nd-round pick for Rosen, Burrow could have been throwing to Metcalf in Miami and Dallas Pro Bowl. See, I think they still would have drafted. I wouldn't have drafted Parsons. I would have drafted because you got Phillips. I would have drafted Penei Sewell. If you went DK and you had Burrow, then Penei Sewell should have been the pick, not Micah Parsons. You know, and if you would have given me Burrow, Metcalf, and Penei Sewell, oh boy. And that could have been the draft pick a year later over Jalen Waddle. No, I think not Micah Parsons. I think Penei Sewell had to be the draft pick. The decision, if you got Metcalf and Burrow, then you have to go Sewell, not Parsons. I'm sorry. Because then you could have just got, you could have still got Phillips at 15. White had the lowest pass, and then the decision to sign Mike White in the first hour of 2023 free agency was a puzzling one, as we wrote at the time. White had the lowest passer rating of any of the top dozen or so available quarterbacks in the 2023 free agent class. The Dolphins knew that his default metrics were historically dreadful, that he wasn't mobile, and that he had 12 career interceptions compared to 8 touchdowns. White... They knew that of the 3 quarterbacks they brought into training camp in 2023, 2 of them, White and Skylar Thompson, had the league's 4 worst passer ratings in 2022. And yet, they signed White anyway, bypassing similarly priced but better 2023 options like Andy Dalton, Sam Darnold, and Gardner Minshew. White got $5.5 million guaranteed. Dalton, who was brilliant for Carolina against Vegas last weekend, got $8 million guaranteed in a 2-year, $10 million deal. With Dalton, the Dolphins would stand a much better chance of surviving this Tagovailoa absence. In 2023, Darnold and Minshew cost the 49ers and Colts, respectively, less than what they paid White. Miami had another chance to land Darnold or Minshew, but bypassed him and Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston again in free agency in March, deluding themselves into believing that White and Thompson were enough if their injury-prone starting quarterback was again injured. If you haven't noticed, Darnold has led the Vikings to a 3-0 start, and Minshew guided Las Vegas to a Week 2 win in Baltimore. And a Dolphins team that inexplicably relinquished a 2nd-rounder for Rosen wasn't even willing to offer a conditional 5th for Justin Fields, who had a far better body of work than Rosen. Pittsburgh acquired Fields for a conditional 2025 6th-round pick, and he has led the Steelers to a 3-0 start. Now, albeit other than this last week, Fields has been very, very, very mediocre. That's just the Steelers are a well-coached team and have been under Mike Tomlin's full tenure. The poor evaluations at backup quarterback fall equally on coach Mike McDaniel and Greer, and that leads us to the final 16 picks of the 2022 draft. 2 quarterbacks, both from the Big 12, would be chosen in those final 16 picks. The Dolphins, they scouted the Big 12 fastidiously that year, as they always do, but picked the wrong guy, opting for Skylar Thompson at pick 247 over Brock Purdy, who went 262 and last. You know the rest of the story. Purdy led the NFL in passer rating in 2023, has a superb 111.1 rating in his career, and is 18-6 as a starter. Thompson appears no better than a borderline NFL player with a 66 passer rating in 9 appearances. Yes, every team passed on Purdy, but only the Dolphins selected another quarterback in the 7th round that year. The Tagovailoa extension, this was not a question of whether Tagovailoa deserved a lucrative new contract. His play the past 2 years likely warranted one, even though he struggled against the nemesis Buffalo. But as Barry Jackson previously repeated on Dolphins in Depth, an extension was too risky because of his history of head injuries. The Dolphins could have gone year to year with Tagovailoa through 2026. The only downside would have been potentially paying a bit more later, with somewhat larger cap hits. But the risk of an extension, in our view, was too great because of the financial consequences. If the Dolphins eventually want to move on from Tagovailoa because of concussions, the dead money cap hit on his 4-year, $212 million extension would be at least $84 million, severely handicapping the team's ability to replace him or augment other positions. Perhaps signing Tyler Huntley and not pursuing Ryan Tannehill will work out better than the half dozen or so aforementioned decisions, every one of which the Dolphins assuredly would reverse if they could back in time. Even if the Dolphins still wanted to extend Tagovailoa, the cost would be considerably cheaper now after his latest concussion. The Dolphins can blame misfortune if they wish for their predicament at quarterback, but if they want to blame something or someone or something, they should start by blaming themselves for regrettable decisions involving most everything else at the position. Now, he makes some strong points. I mean, I hated Josh Rosen when he was coming out. I mean, me and EM Dolphin fan were avidly against Josh Rosen. We ended up being right. Now, I think he nailed it with Tua Tagovailoa. This is not bad scouting. This is bad luck, right? Because yes, with scouting, you have to take injuries into account. But the fact of the matter is what? They checked him out in Indianapolis during the draft process. He got the clearance. And so from there, you now have to evaluate the talent. What could this kid be if we develop him? What does his tape tell us he could be if he's properly developed? And we saw it. League leader in passing yards, league leader in passer rating. So, talent-wise, he's lived up to the bill. The problem is two things. It's twofold. The injury history. And here's the thing, too. You paid him, and I've said this. I'm on record saying this, so this is not a new narrative from Reason. I've said this. Tua, the problem is he's shown us he can win in big moments, but it's not enough. He wins in the big moment 20, 25%. We need you to be winning in the big moment at 50, 60%. We've seen you. The Atlanta loss in Flores last year, right? Tua had a terrible first half, was lights out in the second half, left the field with a lead of a couple points. Flores' defense blew it. The Ravens game from 2022, when he came back and brought us back and cooked them. The Arizona game as a rookie. We've seen him, and those are just a few examples. Hell, in 2022, the first game where we beat the Bills, he had his bell rung, but look at that throw he made to Waddle late in the game that set up the winning points. So Tua's shown he can win in moments and he can beat teams when his back's up against the wall. He just doesn't do it nearly consistently enough. I don't need 20%. I need 50 to 60%. But I've played the clip from Joe Burrow. What's the problem with that? You go back to Alabama. How many second halves did he finish off? Joe Burrow's talked about this. Why are guys like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen so good in clutch moments? Because they went to Wyoming and Texas Tech. They had to play every rep. Whether you were losing or winning, they got every rep in the fourth quarter. And then compound that with, you got Mike McDaniel, first-time head coach. He's learning, he needs reps to learn how to be a play caller, let alone he's proven he needs reps to show he can not be outcoached in big moments and big games. I.e., go back to the Kansas City game in the playoffs. It was absolutely a terrible plan. So, it's just compounded by things. And he does make sense, They went and got a journeyman in Fitzpatrick when you were trying to tank for the best pick, and Fitzpatrick's already proven to you, you don't know what you're getting. He can win. And you know what's crazy, Jeff Fremont? Two players I was high on, right? Right? Think about this. Tua. I said, if you don't draft Tua, I want Jordan Love, but you got to groom him. I'm on record. I used to fight with people in the chat. Malik Willis. Sam Howell was my guy in that draft. I liked Malik Willis as the second best option. Pardon me. So that's what's kind of crazy about that. Now, here is what Rosenhaus had to say about the situation.
How much of a mistake do you think it is, Drew, for the Dolphins not to heavily invest in a backup quarterback like some of the other teams do?
Well, I mean, I think they had the right idea when they went out and signed Mike White. Not many teams can afford to have a big-time backup when you're paying Tua as much as you are. It's a luxury that the Dolphins simply couldn't afford when they invested in Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle. You can't pay everybody in every position, especially backups.
So there you go. Rosenhaus says that's one of that comes with the roster build, the roster makeup. You cannot afford to pay a top tier backup when you're paying guys like Tyreek. And he's right. This is why I've said draft the guy. He's cheaper. This is why what happened. This is why the Eagles went to Hurts in the second round when they already had Wentz under contract. This is what I would say. This is where I'm at. Everyone knows I like Jackson Dart, Garrett Nussmeier. If Jalen Milroe somehow was sitting there in the second, pull the trigger. Especially if you get one of these guys in the second. Now, I don't think Jackson Dart's number 2 in Heisman right now, odds. And, Garrett Nussmeier, he's going to be a first-round pick because he's playing really well. But if someone drops, listen, I'm telling you this, he won't drop. But if Shedeur Sanders dropped to the second round because everyone didn't want to deal with Deion Sanders and his attitude, and what his attitude was a major red flag, I would take Shedeur Sanders in the second round. 110%. That's where I'd be. So, that's where I would be. So, it's crazy everything going on with this whole Tyreek stuff. We're seeing a little bit of the fallout still happen right now, right? Now, remember in the video, you got Miami-Dade police officer Danny Torres. He handcuffed Tyreek Hill, right? And it's led to an investigation and a reassignment. Remember, he was reassignment. Now, weeks later, details reveal that Torres may have lied about a non-existent law that landed Calais Campbell in cuffs alongside Hill, right? Because remember, Campbell and Jonnu Smith, they came to Hill's aid. Now, here's the thing. Campbell hasn't even received an apology, whatever goes down. Right? Now, Campbell was told by Torres that he had violated a law by not being 25 feet away from the officers when they conducted a traffic stop on Hill. And the Miami Herald did an investigation, and Torres cited a law that does not exist. That's basically where we're at right now. He told Campbell, you're blocking traffic and you need to move or get towed and all this kind of stuff. And, now Ron DeSantis signed a new bill that would create a 25-foot no-go zone around first responders after being verbally warned to step away. That law is not even into effect right now. It doesn't go into effect till January 1st, 2025. So that would not apply to Calais Campbell. So now, could Torres say you're obstructing justice? Maybe, but that's not what he said on camera. And it's on camera saying you got to move 25 feet away and then changing it to 50 feet away because of state law. So it might look like now we've got lying police officers. So it's crazy right now. It's crazy right now. Calais Campbell was just there to support his teammate, and it seems the police officers used a law that isn't even into effect yet, thus lied to him and used it as a reason to put him in handcuffs. This is just not getting good as the investigation continues to go on. So, anyways, it's that whole situation is just ridiculous. So ridiculous. So I don't know. Guys, I'm going to be back tomorrow with Neil, 5 o'clock, Too Deep. I mean, you're probably going to want to tune into that one because Neil, he's been having meltdowns in my texts since quarter one of Sunday. And we're gonna talk to Neil because Neil, I mean, the way he's talking on X right now, he wants a new GM, a new coach, and a new quarterback. So we're gonna talk to Neil tomorrow. Might be a little bit of an emotional one tomorrow for Neil, so you're gonna want to make sure to tune into that tomorrow. All right, so Too Deep, 5 o'clock tomorrow. Game preview on Friday, and then we will be live reacting on Monday night. Brittany's in the chat. Yo, we need to have me, Brittany, and Neil and Jennifer. We need to bring it back for a Dolphins After Dark Sunday because we're in the dead zone on Saturday and Sunday night. Maybe we do a Dolphins After Dark Sunday night after the game. I don't know. After all the games. I don't know. Brittany, shout out to you in the chat. Shout out to all of you in the chat. I love each and every one of you for supporting me and showing some love. Over 450 of you tuned in today in the live stream. Smash that like button on the way out. Subscribe if you're new. And I will see you on the next one. Until then, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day, baby.